Okay, I think we're going to get started. I'm sure there's going to be more people joining as we go along, but we've got quite a few people already. So my name is Nancy Neerman. I am the Assistant Director of the Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program. I'm here today with the program's director, Carolina Rodriguez, and we are going to talk to you about all things student loans, major updates, some guidance, because we know that this is a particularly um, confusing and challenging time to be dealing with student loans. So hopefully there's a little bit of everything there for you to get the best guidance that we can give you at this point. So just a little housekeeping before we start. I'm going to be doing the presentation. Carolina is going to be behind the scenes answering your questions. If you have any questions, type them into the Q&A. If you have any questions about whatever we are discussing, or if you want to have any just general questions about student loans, feel free to type them into the Q&A. We'll do our best to answer everybody's questions today. Like I said, there's quite a few people on the webinar, so if we can't get to your question answered today, you can always follow up with us after the webinar. So with that, I'm going to just turn my video off and share my screen, and we'll get started. And Carolina, if you can just confirm that you can see the screen.
I can see it.
Great. Okay, so we called our webinar today, Weathering the Storm, Navigating the Student Loan System in Uncertain Times, and that's exactly where we find ourselves. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the EdCap program. We're going to go into important updates. We're going to talk about the strategies for eliminating your debt, a little bit on the repayment options. And then we're going to go into some of the forgiveness programs, the big ones that you need to know about that a lot of people of you are probably curious about, and wind it up with some specific guidance depending on what your situation is. And just a word about default in case there's anybody listening here who is in default. So in terms of the program, the Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program, otherwise known as EdCap, we are part of the Community Service Society, which is a big nonprofit. It's been around for about 180 years. We were created in 2019 specifically to deal with the issue of student debt. And the reasons for setting up the program were really twofold. Number one, student debt is it's a huge issue, not just in New York, but nationally. It's the second largest consumer debt after mortgages, about $1.7 trillion nationally. And there were about 2.5 million borrowers in New York with about $100 billion worth of student loan debt. The other reason that we set the program up is because the federal student loan system is very, very complex and has become incredibly difficult to navigate through. So when your situation, whether it's complex or not complex, you need people who are kind of living, eating, breathing this topic to really understand what's going on. And we'll go through some of the changes and what's coming down the pike in a little bit. A couple of things to know about our program is that we are funded by New York State, so all of our services are free. We offer obviously these free webinars to the public. We offer webinars to individual organizations, and we offer free one-on-one counseling. So if after this webinar you want to talk to a counselor because you didn't get all your questions answered, and in many cases people are going to have very specific situations, we may not be able to answer everything on the webinar. You can reach out to our helpline or through our email and our website and get help with any number of things, including things like helping you determine your best repayment options, accessing loan forgiveness, cancellation, discharge programs, applying for things like consolidation, deferments, forbearances. We will act as your advocate and help you resolve any issues that you might have with your loan servicers and lenders. If you're in default or if you're about to go into default, we can help you either get out of default or hopefully prevent you from having to deal with any involuntary collections. We've also, in the more recent months, have been doing more with sort of pre-college counseling. So if you are a student who's thinking about going to school, or you have a child that's about to go to school, and you want help filling out the FAFSA forms or understanding the financial awards offers, and trying to minimize your debt while going to college, we can help you with that as well. So it's kind of a full suite of services that we can offer you when it comes to student loans. Okay, so let's get right into it in terms of the major updates, and there have been a lot of updates in the last couple of weeks specifically. So let's go through them all, and we'll give you our best insights as to what's going on. So I'm sure you've probably all read about the layoffs and it seems to be the goal of the current administration to dismantle the Department of Education. And the first steps have been to lay off probably at this point, more than half of the department's employees. Specifically, they have targeted, and whether there's going to be, we're seeing some, major impacts, is the people that kind of are responsible for the oversight, people responsible for financial aid and civil rights enforcement. These departments are kind of being decimated at this point. So the Federal Student Aid Office has lost hundreds of career staffers. This is weakening their ability to provide oversight of the various loan servicers, the Mohilas, the Advantages, the Nelnets. These are the folks that you have the most contact with. The support centers like call centers, borrower assistance, the ombudsman's group, they have been gutted, and this is going to curtail the ability to monitor things like fraud, get satisfactory answers and resolutions to borrower complaints. All of that has been substantially reduced, in addition to the fact that the technology division has been hit hard as well. So we may encounter problems with some of the websites, potentially maybe even delays in FAFSA applications going through later this year. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet, but these are the things that could be coming down the pike as a result of the reduction of the workforce at federal student aid. And my understanding is that there's more layoffs to come. You probably also saw that after the president signed an executive order that indicating their desire to dismantle the Department of Education, the following day he announced that the student loan portfolio would be moving from the Department of Education over to the Small Business Administration. So the Small Business Administration, from what we can gather, is an independent agency that's tasked with providing counseling and capital to small businesses within the United States. The administrator of the SBA holds a cabinet level position, but the agency itself is not a department of the federal government. So it's kind of this sort of weird hybrid structure. The day that they announced this transition from the Department of Education to the SBA also announced that it planned to reduce its staff by 43% to just under 3,600 people. So the president can't actually close the Department of Education without an act of Congress, and most experts believe he can't move the student loan portfolio over to SBA without an act of Congress. So even though, despite the fact that he mentioned in his press release that this was going to happen immediately, number one, nothing's happened to date. Number two, it's likely not going to be immediately, and there's likely to be challenges to this move on the basis of the fact that it needs to be approved by Congress. Not to mention that the SPA runs a portfolio that's probably 30 times smaller than the student loan portfolio. So it's about a $56 billion portfolio of loans that it administers versus the $1.6 trillion as in federal student loans. And they deal with considerably less than fewer transactions because there are 43 million borrowers of federal student loans. So stay tuned. We'll have to see how this all pans out. We also wanted to give you an update on the SAVE litigation. As you're probably aware, a number of states attorney general from Kansas and Missouri, along with about 16 or 17 other states, filed lawsuits challenging the Biden administration's authority to create the SAVE program last year. That ultimately wound up in an appeals court last July, where they put an injunction which prevented the department from really offering forgiveness through the SAVE program, enrolling new borrowers in the SAVE program, or even billing people based on the formula that is embedded into SAVE. So what happened was most of you or people who were enrolled in the SAVE plan as of last July were placed in a forbearance pending the outcome of the litigation. Well, the update on the litigation is in February of this year, the appeals court upheld the injunction and has now remanded the case back to the lower courts for a final decision. So the forbearance that most SAVE borrowers are in, that continues. It's going to continue until the litigation is resolved. Right now, that forbearance has an expiration date of July 31st. But if the court situation is not resolved by that date, you would expect that forbearance to be extended yet again. Keep in mind that the SAVE plan is a non-interest bearing forbearance, so you don't have to make a payment. There's no interest accruing on your account, but time spent in this forbearance does not count towards forgiveness. So it doesn't count towards PSLF, and it doesn't count towards income-driven repayment forgiveness. After this last court ruling, the department shut down the online applications for income-driven repayment plans and for consolidations. They even took the paper application off the website when it comes to the IDR applications. That has since been restored. So you can submit an income-driven repayment plan application online or by paper, but they're not actually processing anything as of yet. We don't know exactly when they might be starting to process again. We've heard, and this is not confirmed by the department, but we've heard it could be around mid-May, but stay tuned because we're not sure. What I can tell you, though, is that there is an estimated 1 million applications backlogged. So even when they do start processing, it's going to take quite a while to get through that backlog. So you're going to be looking at long processing delays for any application that you maybe have already filed or are going to file to get actually processed. Income-driven repayment forgiveness, this is forgiveness that you would get after 20 or 25 years just by being enrolled in one of the income-driven repayment plans. This is the program that does not have any employment qualifications attached to it. That kind of forgiveness seems to be on hold right now. It doesn't appear that they're offering forgiveness through any of the plans. And forgiveness in a number of these plans, like Payee or ICR, is dependent upon the outcome of the SAVE litigation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Online loan consolidation applications have reopened. The department is processing consolidations, whether you file them online or by paper. But you want to reach out and get some advice if you are considering doing a consolidation right now, because remember, the consolidation applications are being processed, but if you're looking to enroll in an IDR plan with after the consolidation, the IDR applications are not. So there's just some strategy involved in that. There are situations where you may want to do the consolidation and others where it maybe doesn't make sense to do it right now. So reach out to us and we'll give you some guidance before you actually embark upon the consolidation process. Public service loan forgiveness remains in place. So the litigation is not targeting the public service loan forgiveness program itself. It does, of course, target some of the income-driven repayment plans, which you need to make payments in to get the PSLF. So I'm not saying it's not impacted, but the litigation will not determine the outcome of PSLF. PSLF is a law. It's currently in place. People actually are getting their 120 qualifying payments. Some people are getting their loans discharged even now. If you're in a non-SAVE IDR plan, you can continue making payments and accumulating credit towards PSLF. So we're going to talk more about this later. Recertification guide. So as you probably know, and this is where we saw a lot of issues over the last couple of months. If you're in an income-driven repayment plan, typically these plans have to be recertified annually, so that you update your income, your family size, your tax filing status. But because of the pandemic and then because of the SAVE forbearance, a number of these certification dates have been pushed back. What happened, however, earlier this year is that there were people that were not in the SAVE forbearance. So you might have been in payee or ICR or IBR, whose recertification dates and deadlines were basically their plans expired in February. And then they tried to recertify, but weren't able to do so because they had shut down processing of these applications. So the department just recently put up some additional guidance for people who were in this predicament. We saw a lot of people trying to recertify. Maybe your payment got reset to the standard 10-year plan, which was something that you might not have been able to afford. So they've tried to clarify, and we're not saying that this is happening exactly the way they're saying it should be, but this is the guidance that they've given. So if your recertification date was due on or before February 20th, and you submitted a form by that date and it was processed, then you're not impacted. So you should be fine. You should be in your new plan with a new recertification date sometime late this year or early next year. If you submitted it by February 20th, but it was not processed, then the recertification date should be extended by a year, and you're not supposed to have to take any action. So you want to be checking your servicer accounts periodically to make sure that those dates were actually extended, because it was going to take them a few weeks to actually get through updating all the accounts. Now, if you didn't submit your application by February 20th, or you tried and it was rejected and you wound up in with a payment that was reset, you should submit a new recertification application to adjust your payment now. I'm not sure whether it's going to be processed anytime soon, but we're yeah, it may not be processed anytime soon, but you should resubmit an application at this point. For recertifications that were due on or after February 21st, again, your recertification dates have been should have been extended by a year, and no action is going to be required. If you were put into a standard, or if your payment plan was reset, they should be going back and undoing the new payment plan that the new repayment plan that you were, or sorry, the new dollar amount that you were asked to pay, and they should be resetting you to your previous IDR payment. That's supposed to happen automatically, but if it doesn't, you may have to reach out and request a forbearance if you're in a situation where you can't afford a payment until they make some of these fixes. So just continue to monitor your accounts, and make sure that the recertification dates are being applied per the guidance. I just want to say, for anybody that has a question at this point, please put your questions into the Q&A. We'll be periodically breaking to share some of those questions and answers with you, and we'll try to do as much as we can at the end as well. Okay, in terms of what's coming down the pike and the impact of legal challenges and some other things that are out there, the court ruling is probably going to eliminate the SAVE plan. So if you haven't heard this already, most experts are pretty much 99.999% sure at this point that the SAVE plan is not going to survive the current litigation. So if you're in the SAVE plan, you may not have to make a plan to get out of that plan right now, but at some point you're going to have to think about switching into a different income-driven repayment plan. Some of the rules affecting other IDR plans also may be impacted by the SAVE regulations if related regulations that were implemented at the time of SAVE, which are also being reviewed by the courts, are struck down. So some of these things could be automatic recertification of your IDR plans through the IRS retrieval process. So if you authorize the IRS to access your if you authorize the Department of Education to access your tax information through the IRS database. That was supposed to allow you to automatically recertify your IDR plans every year. But that was part of that regulation, so that if it gets struck down, that might go away. One thing to be very aware of, if you're pursuing IDR forgiveness, not PSLF, we're going to go through that in a little while, but if you're pursuing IDR forgiveness, so this is, remember, this is for people who have large loan balances and moderate incomes, but you may not have the employment requirements to allow you to get into PSLF. Just if you're enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan for 20 or 25 years, your balances would be forgiven and there's no employment requirement. One of the regulations that is being reviewed right now that is related, that was implemented at the time that the SAVE plan was to allow borrowers to get weighted average retroactive credit towards IDR forgiveness if you consolidated. So in the past, if you consolidated your loans, any accumulated credit towards forgiveness would have been lost. The new regulations were meant to say that you could retain a portion of your retroactive credit, so you wouldn't lose everything if you consolidated. But that is under review, and then that could get struck down, which means you'd be back to consolidating and losing any credit that you had accumulated up to that point. There were other things that were proposed in there, like access to the IBR plan, and the ability to earn credit towards forgiveness while curing a default, and a whole number of other things. The other thing that's being considered, that the appeals court sort of signaled that the lower courts can expand their scope and consider, is whether or not IDR forgiveness can be offered through plans other than income-based repayment. So in other words, if you are enrolled in Payee or ICR and you're pursuing IDR forgiveness, there's a chance that they may determine in this court ruling that those particular plans cannot offer IDR forgiveness. Now, again, that's different from PSLF. They do qualify for PSLF, but if you're pursuing IDR forgiveness, going forward, you may not be able to get forgiveness in that program through these particular plans. The one plan which is not impacted by the litigation in this respect is income-based repayment, or IBR. If you're in that plan is law. It expressly allows forgiveness after 20 or 25 years. So the outcome of the legal challenges was not going to impact the ability to get loan forgiveness or IDR forgiveness through income-based repayment. Other potential challenges beyond the legal challenges can come from a number of different areas. The Congress has a budget reconciliation bill that they may propose some changes to federal student loans. And there's also something called the negotiated rulemaking process, which they've just announced they're going to start this process. That's a year or more long process where they try to establish new rules and regulations for federal student loans. It involves a lot of discussion and public hearings and public commentary. So any changes that they make through this process would not be implemented until the summer of 2026 at the earliest, possibly later. But some of the proposals that we've heard are on the table would be things like either replacing the current repayment options with two plans, just the standard 10-year fixed repayment plan and maybe some version of an income-driven repayment plan that does not provide forgiveness, or making changes to the existing IDR plans such as Payee and ICR. They've also talked about sunsetting the PLUS loan program. That's the program that allows parents and graduate students to borrow up to the cost of attendance so that you can complete you can fund your entire education within the federal student loan system. If that goes away, then people would be faced with either taking out private loans to bridge that gap, which we would just caution that private loans can be very, very difficult to manage after school. There's a lot fewer options or protections. Or people will just not be able to go to these expensive schools any longer. So, and then finally, they have also discussed changing PSLF eligibility requirements. We've heard nothing about them eliminating the PSLF program itself, but they may want to make some changes to the eligibility criteria as was announced in the most recent executive order. So having heard all of this, what should you do as a borrower? And our big message to people at this point is one of the things that you can do that's within your control is to keep good records. Don't rely on federal student aid. Don't rely on the servicers to keep your records accurate going forward. So you want to make sure that you're screenshotting or downloading information from important accounts on a regular basis. And that would be things like loan details, which you can get from your federal student aid account or from your servicer accounts. You should probably do both. And that's like the loan balances, interest rates, the kind of repayment plan that you're in, payment history that's going to come from your servicer account, information from your PSLF tracker if you have one, or your IDR forgiveness tracker that's going to come from federal student aid. Any important notifications from the from your servicer inbox, you want to download those and keep those for your records. You want to repeat this process monthly, or if you're notified that your loans are being transferred either to another servicer or to the Small Business Administration. And just by the way, because I'm sure you probably have these questions about any potential transfer to the SBA, a transfer to the SBA should not change any of the terms of your loans. It doesn't change the type of loans that you have. It doesn't change your balance. It shouldn't change your interest rates, the kind of repayment plan that you're in, your forgiveness credits that you've already accumulated. None of that changes if your loans are transferred to a different administration. All the rules of federal student loans still apply, whoever is going to be managing that portfolio going forward. Okay, Carolina, I'm going to stop briefly and maybe you want to highlight a few questions?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Let me just give me 1 second. Okay, I was just answering a question. Let me just quickly review a few things to elevate. I think maybe this is a good question for you to answer in the open is there a limit on the safe forbearance, and does that forbearance count towards the 12-month limit of forbearance?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So there is no limit that we are aware of on the safe forbearance and it should not count towards the limit that you're allotted towards your for forbearances per loan throughout the life of the loan. So the safe forbearance just as you've probably seen, it's already been extended multiple times. I think they're putting dates on the safe forbearance in anticipation of when the lawsuit might be resolved, but then when we get close to that date and they realize it's not, they're just extending the forbearances, and it should continue like that.
Do we know what could potentially happen if SAFE is eliminated? Will they be moved over to an IDR or placed in a standard repayment plan?
We don't know. That's we don't really know. It at one point, I think the assumption was much like what happened if you were in the old revised pay-as-you-earn plan, you were automatically transitioned to SAVE. We thought for a while that they might do that in reverse if SAVE is eliminated, but they've expressed that they're not that interested in bringing back revised pay-as-you-earn. So we're not anticipating that they're going to bring back revised pay-as-you-earn, but don't kill me if I'm wrong about that, because we just honestly don't know how it would happen or what might happen. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think the number one question is, how do I get out of the forbearance and apply for another IDR, even though they're not being processed? And related to this person was told to apply for payee.
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna reserve that question because we're going to discuss that later on in the presentation.
Yeah,
If that's okay.
it's coming up really quickly.
Yeah.
And I know I've answered a similar question. But that will be part of the focus in what's coming up. And the next question, I think I might stop here because I think you're about to cover this, and I'll continue with the Q&A is about the buying months. So I think I'm gonna stop here so you can get to it, because I think a lot of the questions are gonna be answered, and I'll continue answering in the Q&A.
Okay, yeah, we are gonna, I have a whole page on the buyback, so we'll get to that shortly.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
but before we do, I just want to talk about general strategies for tackling debt. So we've been working with clients, thousands of clients now since 2019, and we have determined that um, that basically everybody falls into one of three buckets in terms of strategies for eliminating your debt. The first bucket would be to pay your debt in full as quickly as possible. So this is going to be for people whose income is high in comparison to their debt, and you have the ability to make more than the required payment or make a lump sum payment. So if your strategy is to pay the debt off completely, then you want to pay it off as quickly as possible and as aggressively as possible, because the less time it takes you to pay the loan off, the less you'll pay in interest overall. So you may have to make higher payments on a monthly basis, but at the end of the day, you'll be saving money overall if you get rid of the loan relatively quickly. The middle bucket is probably where most of our clients reside, and probably most of you here on this website as well, on the webinar, which is to identify a forgiveness program that you're eligible for, like a PSLF, and make the minimum required payment. Generally, you do this in an income-driven repayment plan until such time as you receive forgiveness. So the whole idea here is that if you think that there's no possible way that you can eliminate your debt in less time that you can receive forgiveness, you just want to find the cheapest repayment plan, make that payment until you meet the requirements to have your loans discharged. And then the final strategy, which sounds a little bit depressing, but it's here for a reason, is to pay the minimum required until death do you part. This is going to be generally for older borrowers who maybe took out late in life loans for themselves, or maybe they took out Parent Plus loans for their kids, and they're either nearing retirement or in retirement and facing maybe having to pay these loans back for 20 or 30 years. And of course, if you're 60 or 70, that could be the rest of your life. So the idea here is to just find the cheapest possible option, make the payments until you pass. But the reason that we put this up here is because a lot of people don't realize that federal student loans are discharged in death. So if the primary borrower passes away, the obligation of the debt does not pass to their estate or to their beneficiaries or their loved ones. So if you're in this situation, you just want to find the cheapest option available, make those payments, and know that it's not going to be a burden to your loved ones once you pass. And then repayment options. I think there are generally two basic ways to make payments within the federal student loan system. You can either use one of the traditional plans where the payment is based on the size of the debt, the interest rate, and a predetermined payback period. And the fixed versions of these plans is like paying back any other kind of consumer debt. So it's like paying back a mortgage or an auto loan. You make one monthly payment over the life of the loan, after which you've paid the entire thing, including all the interest. The alternative to that, if you can't afford it, which many people can't, is income-driven repayment plans. And when I say income-driven or IDR, that is the umbrella term for a number of different plans. Okay, so I know people get confused with the terminology, but that's the all-encompassing umbrella term. Right now, none of the IDR applications are being processed. We hope that they're going to resume processing soon. But IDR plans, really the majority of the plans have nothing to do with the interest rates or the loan balances. It's based on your family size, your adjusted gross income, and your tax filing status. These plans offer forgiveness. It says 10 to 25 years, but the 10 years was through SAVE, and that's not going to happen. So the other plans offer forgiveness after 20 or 25 years, which we've discussed. The other benefit to the IDR plans is that you can adjust payments if your income changes in between recertification dates. You can have the plan recalculated, and your payment will be adjusted accordingly. And again, these are going to be best suited for people who have high loan balances, moderate incomes, or you're pursuing some kind of a forgiveness program that requires that you be in these plans. The traditional plans have some benefits too, if you can afford them, is that it could be a shorter time period to repayment, and there's no administrative issues with the traditional plans, meaning you don't have to recertify your income every year. So the payment is the payment. You just enroll in the plan and you make the payments. Of course, for the IDR plans, the downside is that one of the downsides is that you do have to go through this annual verification process, which can be cumbersome administratively and sometimes difficult for people to keep up on, although not impossible if you miss an IDR recertification date. It's not impossible to get back into an IDR plan, but it can be a pain in the neck, and it might cost you a couple of months of higher payments before you can do that. The one of the other issues with the income-driven repayment plans, in all the plans except for SAVE, if you make a payment that doesn't cover the interest, then the interest just keeps accumulating. The unpaid interest keeps accumulating in your accounts. And that's why people always complain about making payments on federal student loans, and then just seeing their balances go up. But keep in mind, for people that are in these IDR plans that are not covering the interest, generally the goal is you're pursuing forgiveness. So the goal is really, the strategy is not to pay off the entire balance. It's just to pay the minimum until you can get that forgiveness. The downside to the traditional plans, sometimes you just can't afford them, limited flexibility in adjusting your payments, and they don't offer forgiveness. The names of the plans for the traditional plans, if you see standard, extended, or graduated, or in some cases, if you see something called a level plan on your servicer accounts, those are all versions of a traditional plan. The IDR plans right now are income-based repayment, or IBR, pay-as-you-earn, payee, income contingent repayment, or ICR, and then the SAVE plan, which is probably going to go away. All right. So I want to talk a little bit now about some of the forgiveness plans and some of these strategies that you might want to use for trying to earn credit towards some of these forgiveness programs. The IDR forgiveness offers 20 to 25 years offers forgiveness after 20 or 25 years. The Biden administration implemented something called the IDR account adjustment, which gave borrowers retroactive credit towards IDR forgiveness based on a set of relaxed rules. So in most cases, not every case, but in most cases now, borrowers have this IDR tracker that's on your federal student aid account that allows you to see the progress that you're making towards IDR forgiveness. Like we've said, the current environment, the SAVE litigation is questioning whether borrowers are going to be able to continue to receive IDR forgiveness under SAVE, payee, or ICR. IBR is the only one that explicitly allows you to do that. But just keep in mind, even if they say you can no longer earn forgiveness, do forgiveness through payee or ICR or SAVE, and you've been awarded credit under those accounts, that credit is transferable to other plans. So if you can transfer to IBR, you would not lose all the credit that you've already accumulated towards IDR forgiveness. So you just want to make sure that, again, you're downloading all your records and dig into this IDR tracker. Screenshot. It's not the easiest. It's a little bit cumbersome to do it, but you want to just screenshot all the information and all the months that have been deemed qualifying and ineligible, so you have that for your records. Public service loan forgiveness. Public service loan forgiveness, if you can get it, is one of the better deals within the federal student loan system. It forgives loan balances after making 120 qualifying monthly payments, which is 10 years, based on the following requirements. So it has to be an on-time payment made in full on or after October 1st, 2007. That's when the program started. So any qualifying payment or any payments that you made prior to that date aren't going to count towards PSLF. These payments must be made on direct loans. You must be in an income-driven repayment plan, or some payments on a standard 10-year fixed repayment plan will count. Not all, but some will count. And then you have to meet certain employment requirements. So you have to work an average of 30 hours a week for one or more qualifying employers. And a qualifying employer is generally going to be a nonprofit or a government. And if you're working more than one job, you would need to work them concurrently to get to that 30 hours per week. Well, I should say if you're working more than one job that's part-time, that is less than 30 hours per week, you would have to work them concurrently in order to get the credit for an average of 30 hours per week. The payments in PSLF do not have to be consecutive. So you could earn 3 years worth of credit for PSLF and then go to the private sector and then come back a few years later to a PSLF qualifying job and not lose the original credit that you accumulated. And just keep in mind, if you're getting close to the 120 qualifying payments, at the time that you submit the application for forgiveness, so that should be like your last application, you need to be meeting the employment requirements. So you need to be fully employed. You need to be working 30 hours per week for a qualifying employer. So if you're thinking about quitting your job anytime soon, and you haven't submitted that last application yet, don't do it until you've actually submitted. And in this environment, I would say gotten confirmation that you've got the 120 qualifying payments. The other big benefit of PSLF is that the forgiven balances are not taxable at the federal or at the state level in New York. We talked about the IDR account adjustment and how it pertained to income-driven repayment forgiveness. A couple things that I wanted people to be aware of is that any income-driven repayment forgiveness credit that you received on direct loans can be converted to PSLF credit when you verify that you've met the employment requirements for those particular months, and you do that by filing a PSLF certification form. If you have FFEL loans, this is an older type of loan program. Those loans had to be consolidated by June 30th of last year in order to benefit from that retroactive credit from the IDR account adjustment. It doesn't mean that you can't make them eligible for PSLF now. You can consolidate them, turn them into direct loans, and then they will become eligible for PSLF, but you will not get any retroactive credit for doing that. Again, you probably want to reach out if that's your situation and get some guidance and advice. Consolidation rules for public service loan forgiveness. I thought it was important to put this in here because there is a difference between the consolidation rules when people are consolidating loans for public service loan forgiveness versus income-driven repayment forgiveness. A borrower right now can consolidate loans that already have credit towards PSLF and get weighted average retroactive credit towards PSLF on their post-consolidation loan. So what does this mean? If you have, let's say, as an example, you have 2 direct unsubsidized loans, each are $50,000. One loan has 40 months of qualifying payments towards PSLF, the other has 60. Once you consolidate them together, you'll have one direct unsubsidized consolidation loan of $100,000, and you'll have 50 qualifying payments towards PSLF. So you don't lose complete credit on your accumulated credit. Basically, you kind of are where you should be post-consolidation. The thing is that you do want to make sure that you submit the PSLF certification forms first before you do the consolidation to update your qualifying payment count so that you know what the post-consolidation qualifying payment count should look like. We currently don't really recommend that you consolidate for this reason right now until the IDR applications are up and running again, because you can really do this at any time. It's not necessarily time sensitive. Okay, the PSLF buyback. I know a lot of people have been waiting to hear about this. The buyback was part of a new regulation that was implemented in 2023. It's not part of the current litigation, but it's also not part of the original PSLF law, so it could be rolled back at some point. We don't know if they haven't expressed it, whether or not they're going to roll this back, but I'm just putting it out there that it's one of the things that could be. It's easier to roll this back than it would be other aspects of PSLF. But what the buyback allows you to do is purchase PSLF credit for months that you spent in a disqualifying status under the following circumstances. So you have to have 120 qualifying months of employment on record. So that's not 120 qualifying payments. Just you have to have enough 120 qualifying months of employment on record, which means that if you think you do, you want to submit those PSLF certification forms to get to that 120 qualifying months. And then when you have the employment on record, you must buy back enough months to bring you to 120 qualifying payments. You can't purchase months prior to consolidation or months spent in a school deferment, grace period, or default. And to be honest, we're not 100% sure at this point whether or not you can purchase the months spent in the save forbearance. Even though the Department of Education's website, FSA, says that you can, it's not clear at this time whether or not that's happening. In fact, it's a little bit unclear whether they're processing any of these buybacks right now. As far as we can tell, nobody's been able to successfully buy back months in a save forbearance. But you should always look to see whether there's months in disqualifying statuses that you accrued prior to the save forbearance when you're thinking about doing the buyback. Now, even though we're not sure exactly what's happening with the buyback, if you think you qualify for it, there's no harm in actually submitting a request. And you do that through the PSLF reconsideration process. You want to specify the months that you want to buy back, and then you want to include the exact phrasing that I've put here. We've come to realize sort of by happenstance of working with clients that some applications were rejected because it didn't have this specific wording on the request. So you literally want to write on the request, I have at least 120 months of approved qualifying employment, and I am seeking PSLF or TEPSLF discharge through PSLF buyback. Please assess my eligibility for PSLF buyback. Okay, and then I just wanted to mention a quick word about total and permanent disability discharge, or TPD. This is a program where if you have some kind of a mental or physical disability that prevents you from earning a livable wage, you can get your loans fully discharged, your federal student loans fully discharged. Similar to what happened with public service loan forgiveness last year, this program is transition from being managed by Nelnet to being managed directly by the Department of Education. So there's a new website where you can submit these TPD applications. You can do it fully electronically. You can use an online application and request a manual signature, or you could just do it with a PDF. But manually signed applications either have to be mailed, faxed, or uploaded to the accounts on studentaid.gov. So if you're looking for a TPD discharge and you need help, just reach out to us for some guidance. Okay, and now I'm just going to go quickly through the guidance for borrowers, and then we'll just open it up to questions or do the questions at the end. So if you're in the save forbearance, and this is probably going to address some of the questions that came up earlier. If you're in the save forbearance, there's no action that is required of you right now, unless you're one of these people that is pursuing public service loan forgiveness and you want to start accumulating qualifying monthly payment. And I'll go into that a little bit in a little bit more detail. But just remember, if you're in the save forbearance, your payments are paused and there's no interest accruing on your account. Though the online applications have reopened, they're still not being processed. So it might make sense, frankly, to it just might make sense to wait until we know that IDR applications are being processed and to get a better idea of what the time frame is for getting them processed before you actually go and apply, if there's no immediate reason that you need to accumulate credit towards forgiveness. If you're in a standard plan and trying to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, you may have to continue to request forbearances until they get those IDR applications processed. And I know this has been a pain in the neck for a lot of people that you have to submit a forbearance request. They apply a forbearance for a few months. It expires. You have to call them back and request another one. Unfortunately, we've not been able to figure out a workaround to that unless you are unless the servicer just automatically transitions you from a processing forbearance into a general forbearance, which does not seem to be happening consistently across the board. So if you're in this situation, you just need to monitor the account, know when the forbearance ends, and then call them to extend it if necessary. If you need to recertify your IDR plan, go back and look at the recertification guidance that we talked about earlier. If you want to submit a paper IDR recertification form, some people need to do this for various reasons. You can do that by uploading to the servicer's online portal, by sending certified mail or by fax. Just make sure in whatever method you use, you have proof of the date that you submitted it. And again, if your payments have been reset within your because you missed a recertification date or you weren't able to recertify, you may have to continue to ask for forbearance until they reprocess you. If you're looking to switch in between non-save IDR plans, at this point, we'd probably say hold off, just continue what you're doing in your current IDR plan, and wait until they're actually processing things again. For PSLF borrowers, in addition to just downloading all your records, if you're in the payee, IBR, or ICR plans, continue making your payments in those plans because you're accumulating credit towards PSLF. So remember, even if they say that you can't get IDR forgiveness through payee or ICR, you will continue to get credit towards PSLF by making payments in these plans. If you're in the save forbearance and you're close to being at 120, or you just want to kind of get on with the process of earning credit, you can submit the applications online or by paper right now. Again, you're going to expect significant processing delays because they're just not processing anything. There's no way to make that happen faster. You want to explore your options about which plan to enroll in. We recommend income-based repayment if that's something that you're eligible for and that you can afford, because that's the one plan that's least susceptible to any of these legal challenges. But remember, payee and ICR, if they're cheaper for you, and if they continue to exist, will be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. You can try submitting the PSLF buyback request. Again, no downside to submitting it. We may not get an answer, but no downside to submitting it. And if you're eligible, this last strategy probably isn't going to apply to too many people, but if you're eligible and you can afford the payments and you're very close to earning credit, remember payments in the standard 10-year fixed repayment plan do count towards forgiveness. So if you can afford that plan and you're eligible for it, you can call the servicer up and that you can get switched into, you make your additional 1 or 2 payments, and that will get you credit for PSLF. But one caution to remember here is that if you have a direct consolidation loan, you are probably not eligible for the standard 10-year fixed plan unless your balance is below $7,500. You can continue submitting the employment certification forms for PSLF. You want to use the PSLF help tool from your studentaid.gov account, and you want to request an electronic signature from your employer. I can't stress this enough and how important that is. Electronic signatures are being processed very, very quickly. When you submit anything with a manual signature, it could sit there for many months. So to the extent that you can, you always want to try to get your employers to sign off electronically on the PSLF certification forms. And then you want to monitor your progress through the PSLF tracker, which is now on your on your federal student aid account. And then finally, in terms of getting out of default, if you happen to be in default, even though the Fresh Start program, which was a program that was in place during the Biden administration and expired last year, even though that's not available any longer, there are still 2 different ways to get out of default. You can either do a loan rehabilitation, which requires making 9 monthly agreed upon payments over a 10-month period. Or you can consolidate your loans if you have to be eligible for each one of these things. But if you have the ability to consolidate, you can do that. It's typically faster. There may be some issues with consolidating right now, though, to get out of default because you're required to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, which you can't right now. So that may not be an immediate option, but if you're in default, frankly, you should reach out for assistance. There are ways to get out of default within the federal student loan system. Okay, and then I'll just point out when you do get this deck, there's just some links in the back. I just want to guide you to the last one, which is the EdCap newsletter. You just click on that link, put your email address in. This is a newsletter that we send out with important updates. This is a way, a means for you to kind of follow all the developments that will come out probably over the next few months, whether it's with the litigation, the reopening and the reprocessing of IDR plans, any change of guidance, all that kind of stuff, anything that affects student loans. And if it's a big thing, we'll put it on that newsletter. And Okay, I'm gonna stop there. This is our contact information. There's different ways to contact us, either through our helpline, by booking an appointment online through our online scheduler, or we also have an EdCap email. And Carolina, let's open it up for those questions. Carolina, you there?
Sorry, I was talking muted.
Ah,
I have my Q&A is growing. So I have 79 questions. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to get your questions that we didn't get to, and we're going to share the answers. We'll do our best to obviously chunk them in if possible, but we hope to give you a Q&A. After the training, give us a day or two, you will get a copy of the recording and PowerPoint presentation. There's a really good question that I think it's worth spending a minute on before we end, and that is for income-driven repayment forgiveness after 20 to 25 years, which repayment plan should you enroll in? So I'm going to try to take a stab at it, Nancy. So just for you to know, that is being challenged as part of the SAVE litigation. The SAVE litigation is basically saying not only was SAVE illegal, so to speak, but the forgiveness offer under payee and ICR was also illegal. So generally, we would say IBR should survive as an income-driven repayment plan, and the forgiveness, so to speak, should stay there. So people could arguably switch over to IBR. Now, there is a group of people that if you are already in a non-safe plan, I wouldn't say that you should switch at this point, especially if you are under payee, because we don't know. People may be grandfathered in. So I would not be like, let me jump over to IBR. If you are in a repayment plan and you're getting credit towards forgiveness, stay there, because you may be grandfathered in, and that's a good thing. So don't switch necessarily. Just keep in mind that so far we keep saying IBR may be the repayment plan that people might want to enroll in if they're not already in it, because that may survive. But that's that.
and just,
PSLF, yeah.
yeah, sorry, I just want, maybe you were gonna say this, but just want to reiterate that that's what Carolina's talking about is income-driven repayment forgiveness. Payments in all these plans still count towards PSLF.
Yes. And related to that, will PSLF survive? What if I'm working towards it? I'm almost done. So if you notice, aside from their executive order that still has to go through the negotiated rule-making process, you have not heard this administration they're going to get rid of PSLF. It is probably one of the more favorite programs. So one, it should survive. Two, if it were not to survive, people would be grandfathered in. That's my speculation as an attorney, because you are detrimentally relying on this program, and there will be a lot of lawsuits and all that. And also, in general, rules tend to be prospective. Again, usually you grandfather in, and then you say for loans disbursed after this date, blah, blah, blah. The negotiated rulemaking process is happening, but the rules wouldn't go into effect until July of next year. So just expect that the next 12 months are going to be a little bit chaotic. But again, if you are working towards PSLF or even IDRF, you're accumulating credit, just keep good records of that. Don't be rushed to change or follow whatever news is happening. Reach out to us. I did provide on several answers, or a couple of answers, or general booking appointment. You can book your own appointment at any point. You can email us at EdCap. I will also say, I know we're at time, for people who have been submitting complaints and are getting nowhere, the Student Borrower Protection Center created a toolkit where you can file a complaint through your elected official. And the reason why that might be appropriate now is because your elected officials are at the forefront, and they should be hearing that this is a priority. And honestly, don't feel that it's going to be what it's going to be. You should be proactive in elevating this issue. They will not prioritize it unless you make them understand that this is a priority for you. So I put that in the chat. If someone can confirm in the Q&A that you can see that. And I'm also going to put in the EdCap contact us. us. Again, I'm sorry we had 500 people, over 500 people register, and that's why we ended up with so many Q&A. There are 83 questions still unanswered, but we're going to try to answer them and share that with you. Again, reach out to us if we can be helpful in a one-on-one.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you everybody for attending, and you'll hear from us.
Thank you, Nancy. Take care.